Welcome to A Century Remembered. Welcome to A Century Remembered. I am Blake Meidel, and today I have the distinct honor to interview Mr. Downtown Los Angeles, the one and only living legend, Mr. Fredrick M. Nicholas. Mr. Nicholas, thank you so much for agreeing to this interview. At almost 102 years old, I know that you have a lot of insights and wisdom for young people like me. I'd like to start by asking you about your background and then your experiences during the last 100 years. Tell me about your childhood.
I was born in Brooklyn, New York. In 1920, I was the oldest one in the group. I stayed in New York for 15 years, and then my family moved out to California.
Did the Great Depression affect you and your family?
Terribly. My father lost his job. My mother was not working. We ended up having to move from New York to California to try to find a new job for my father. We came out here by train, and it took 5 days. And when we arrived in California, we rented a one-bedroom apartment. My mother and father slept in the bedroom. My sister and I slept in the entry hall.
Did that moment inspire you to grow to be who you are today?
Yes.
Understanding that you come from Jewish roots, did you have any family members affected by the Holocaust?
No, my family came from Poland in the 1850s, so it was long before the war, but it made us feel like garbage.
I also understand that you were drafted for the war 2 months before the attack on Pearl Harbor. After the attack, did that change your feelings about being drafted into the Army?
Yes, I was very upset when I was drafted out of school because I just had my final year at USC. You mentioned something about Jewish. I felt that I was prejudiced against, and that's why I was pulled out of school, because I went to see the chancellor of USC and asked him to get me excused so I could finish my final year, and he said, "Don't worry, our boys are all over the place. They'll get you deferred." I went into the Army 2 days later. Once the war was started, I realized I wanted to be part of the United States, the Army, so I was right there at the beginning.
Can you tell me about your experience as a guard at the Japanese relocation camps in California?
I was a private, and the war had just started. I was assigned to San Francisco, and my job was to pick up the Japanese in San Francisco.
What was your opinion about putting all the Japanese into relocation camps during the war?
I was outraged about it. I thought it was the worst thing the United States has ever done. These were all American, born in America. It upset me enough so that I remembered it almost forever. So I spent months moving Japanese to a racetrack called Tanforan.
I believe Tanforan has now been converted into a memorial to really capture what happened during that time.
I ended up buying Tanforan and converted it into a shopping center dedicated to the Japanese.
You'll always keep that memory of your time at the relocation camps. Personally, it's probably my favorite question in this entire interview, because it really shows the hardships and the struggles that you went through during the war, but also the bright side that you turned out of it. Your love for art has closely intersected with your law career. When you were asked to help design and develop MoCA, the Museum of Contemporary Art, how did you respond and what did you do?
MoCA was in a lot of trouble. They called me and asked me if I would come and help. I took over the construction and the design. I spent years on that. And I finally became chairman 6 years. And I was vice chairman for 5 years. So for 11 years I had great effect upon the museum.
Who is your favorite president in your lifetime and why?
Franklin Delano Roosevelt, to me, was our greatest president. He took us through the Depression, through World War II. He was a great man.
Wow, Mr. Nicholas, you have given us a very personal perspective about the important events during the last 100 years that our history books cannot convey. You're known as Mr. Downtown Los Angeles because you've helped shape the scene for our city. With your permission, Mr. Nicholas, I would like to hear more about your involvement in the arts and how they relate into your career.
I became interested in art when I went to law school. I went to the University of Chicago. When I went downtown, I saw an art gallery for the first time. And I went inside and looked at it, and I was overwhelmed. And then I later married an artist, and I became more involved with the arts. I became a lawyer to a number of artists. I was involved in museums. Art changed my life.
Do you consider yourself an artist?
I certainly do not consider myself an artist, but I took various courses in art appreciation.
Did you meet any of the artists whose works you have collected?
I did meet most of the artists that I admired. My favorite was Picasso, and still is. Matisse. I met Matisse. I met most of them.
Let's start with Pablo Picasso. Can you tell me how you met him, the time you spent with him, and what he was like?
I met Pablo Picasso, and I had dinner with him. I spoke fairly good French at that time. I don't now, but I did then. So it was mostly French and some English. It was a very exciting evening for me.
What was Andy Warhol like, and what memories do you have of him?
I was very friendly with Andy Warhol. When I was at MoCA, we did a series of lithographs. We asked Andy Warhol if he would do a lithograph so that we could sell it. I had him at my house for dinner. He was a very nice man. He was very low-key. It was just lovely.
Art really is how we connect as human beings. So that's just really cool how you met some of the most iconic artists.
Everywhere I went, I built my own darkroom. I used to take pictures continually. I used to work every night developing pictures. And
again, it's just incredible to be talking with the man who helped create these landmarks that Los Angeles is famous for. One would think that helping with these projects would be a career enough, but you are also a brilliant real estate attorney. It would be great to hear about your aspect of professional life. It's hard to believe that you've worked in real estate law for over 70 years.
I wouldn't say I'm practicing law. I do law work. The work I do is primarily in real estate. I did my last agreement last week, and I don't think I'm going to do any more. I'm getting too old for it.
You were a founding member of the California Public Council, which is a pro bono law firm that helps poor and needy with free legal services. What inspired you to do this?
Well, public counsel is my greatest contribution to my work. I thought that the lawyers should do something to help the poor, and I came up with a concept that we should form a nonprofit foundation and represent poor people. So it took me 2 years to convince anybody that we should have a foundation. And it's the biggest thing that ever happened.
How did it grow from this small operation to a huge association nationwide that provides $45 million worth of law services each year?
It's incredible.
You are really a Renaissance man. You've been involved in so many different endeavors and all have been successful. All of your accomplishments have made a huge impact on the city of Los Angeles. Mr. Nicholas, I think we can all agree that you have made the most of the last century.
I want to thank Blake for the interview. It was very well done. I appreciate his recognizing me, and I admire him very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us on a journey through A Century Remembered. I am Blake Meidel, and my interview is Mr. Downtown Los Angeles, the one and only living legend, Fred M. Nicholas.